Hey, JoAnne, it is always a pleasure to see you, whether in person, which we had the opportunity to do fairly recently. I know it was fantastic, or
Yay!
virtually. And, we're all craving a little human interaction. And I know you said a minute ago, you feel like I suckered you into doing this. Why do you feel that way?
Well, because I told you before, I don't feel like I have anything very different or interesting to say for a lot of the people within the industry. I just, I mean, I've been around for a long time. Julia, hers always tells me I'm not allowed to say old, I'm not allowed to say, wise and mature. But I mean, I don't, I mean, maybe it's just because I like one-on-one conversations. I don't feel, I don't feel the need or the desire. Some people really like that glory, right? Go up, yay, yay, I'm talking. I don't really care.
Honestly, I'm in the same boat as you. And let's think of this as just a conversation that you and I are having. Other people may or may not be watching at this time.
Yeah,
And in
exactly.
every conversation I have with you, we always go in with a focus, but we end up going on so many different tangents we could talk forever. And that's the beauty of this industry. And I think that's what you offer. You offer so much insight from your career in craft beer and everything you've done. That's really valuable because we can learn from it.
Yeah, I mean, that is one thing that I think, perspective, right? And maybe that's why too I don't like to have discussions because a lot of people don't understand my background to know why I'm saying the things I say, and we can talk a little bit about hazy IPAs and why I hate them too, because of that bigger, right? That bigger conversation. But, you know, I started in this industry haphazardly because I was working in pro sports and the craft brewery was a sponsor and got, fortunately that craft brewery was New England Brewing Company, Marcia King, and the brewer was Phil Markowski. And their passion and their excitement, yeah, I was homebrewing, got me interested in beer. That got me into New Haven Brewing Company. Then I moved to Colorado. That got me into the BA. Yes, I know how to brew. Yes, I have brewed. I don't like to clean. That's why I would never be a really great pro brewer, because that's fundamentally, you have to be a good cleaner if you want to make good beer. But I mean, like the history and the trajectory of where I've been on the brewing side. I've been on the supplier side. I've been on the nonprofit side, or the association side. And then I left for a while and did some consulting and worked again, kind of went back to working with breweries and then have come back as a supplier to an industry that I watched in the background for 6 or 7 years. And it's so, like I said, I kind of have this jumbled ball of yarn of all these different things that come together. And I think that's why sometimes I don't like to do these things, because my perspective is I'm hitting all the notes. I'm not just doing one thing. And so to some people that may seem a little bit scattered or a little bit opinionated,
I
because I
think that's why you and I get along. I like to be a sponge for random information. And over your career, you've looked at the industry from so many different angles. I believe you have a ton of perspective on, each aspect of it, I would imagine.
Yeah, I mean, it's changed, it's grown. I mean, it's 3 decades. It's 3 decades. It's a little bit frightening sometimes, and I'm still here. And I do find the industry fascinating, and I do find the changes that have fascinating over the last 3 decades. And to your point, there's been changes in those 3 decades in each of those areas, right? Obviously brewers, that started in the 80s are kind of like the brewers that started in 2020, 2019. Okay, let's maybe not COVID, but small, passionate people excited about that. The suppliers, that has changed tremendously because of the growth, because of the focus on local. I mean, look at all the new, if you want to say local suppliers, local malt companies, local hop companies, and so it's like that's kind of come full circle and taking it to the next level of down to even that, locality is, your demographic is shrinking where you're looking for your ingredients. And that's pretty cool. And then on the association side, it's definitely adapted. The BA came out of a lot of people, the Brewers Association, but it used to be the Institute of Brewing Studies and the American Home Brewers Association, and then it morphed and then it did something different. And then they made changes during, COVID. And then we have all the state guilds and the importance of the state guilds. And it's my understanding there's now a new craft beer alliance that's starting as well. So I mean, I think of every industry, there's maturity, there's constant change over, no matter whether you've been here 2 years or 30 years. And, you just have to make sure that you're embracing it and you're understanding it, even if you don't agree with it. Because there's a lot I will tell you I don't agree with that happens within our industry. And maybe that's my diverse background, but I'm honest about it. And I'll explain to you why I disagree with the statement, or I'll tell you again why I don't like hazy IPAs. And I think that that's really important that people understand is it's okay to have diversity and be different, as long as you're respectful when you're talking to that other group and you hear what they have to say just as much as they hear what you have to say.
No, I couldn't agree more. It's all about having that conversation because we can learn so much from one another. Now, I want to go way back for you right now, though, because you've been in the industry a little bit of time now. Did you think you were going to end up in the craft beer industry, or as a child, what did you want to be when you grew up?
Boy. So I come from a family of lawyers and doctors, and I actually got accepted to law school. I would have never, ever said beer. But again, I kind of fell into it, right? Working in pro sports, having a brewery, a craft brewery sponsor, going, wow, I like what these guys are. This is fun. And I had, like I said, I had been homebrewing. So, I mean, I liked the whole concept of brewing and beer. There is a big beer history in my family in Anheuser-Busch as well. And I have half of my family that's also in liquor distribution business. So there was some family history in the industry there. But no, it fell in my lap, and I think it stuck because of the positions that I was able to find that really fueled the passion for the.
So when you were working in pro sports and you were involved in tennis, is that correct?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So how did you get connected with beer? Like you said, they were a sponsor. Like how did that relationship go to the next level?
So at the time, I was actually basically sponsorship fulfillment. So I was part of the operations crew and responsible for basically enacting all of the sponsorship benefits for every sponsor within the ATP tour. So, and that's how we met. And they were a sponsor at the Volo tennis tournament in New Haven, Connecticut. Had a little, pop-up stands. To be honest, it was a disaster. And I'll say again, not that the beer was bad, but at the time and at the place in New Haven, Connecticut, it was the land of Amstel Light and Heineken. It was imports. That was what was big at the time. And the one craft brewer that was doing well in New England at the time, again, that was really doing well or starting to do well was Sam Adams, right? Because again, the name. But that was just at the very beginning. And so when I say it was a disaster, I wouldn't say that the sponsorship was a disaster. I think it exposed a lot of people to craft beer, but we just didn't sell as much beer as we wanted. I just didn't see the beer lines. We just, we tried moving the stands. We tried doing different things. We put up some different signage. And I just remember just thinking to myself, I'm like, all these people are missing out on something amazing. Why aren't they trying it? But, again, at the time, and I mean, we still deal with it, right? When somebody has a preconceived notion about what beer is, it's hard sometimes to say, hey, try this. In this day and age, people still, right? They walk in and somebody will go, oh, I don't like dark beer. Just because it's dark, you don't even know what it tastes like. So I think, again, that really kind of stuck with me. Here's people really putting themselves out there for their passion and what they believe in. And it was something that I wanted to be part of.
And one thing I really enjoy about you is your passion for education. It sounds like you were passionate about educating the masses about craft beer, even in those days.
You have to be. I mean, and I will be honest, it is really, really hard as a supplier. I've never opened a brewery, and that was by choice and my personal choice. I invested my time and effort of my life into my son. That was more important to me than that. Not that work isn't.
I love it.
Education as a supplier is essential because we really need to work with the brewers out there to ensure that they're putting their best beer forward. And the more, again, education needs to be formal and informal. And again, these are just the conversations that we're having now, right? Education is the key. Education is the key. When somebody walks in and they go, "Oh, I don't like dark beer," you've got to understand, well, why don't you like dark beer? Do you realize that, there's different types of malt? They could be sweet, they could be, and explain. And it's something that one of the reasons I love working with White Labs is that it's definitely a passion of ours as a company to ensure that we're educating, and not just our customers, brewery customers, but when consumers come into our tasting room and all our beers, we actually have beer analytic sheets that a lot of people don't realize, that we actually understand our strains so that we can pass that information along, because if we do, then better chance of better beer. You can't stay in, yeah, education is key. It just is key.
Yeah, it's all about education. And when wearing your White Labs hat, how much education is based on the products that you're offering to breweries versus just general beer education and techniques to educate everyone involved in the process?
It depends on the audience. I mean, like I said, we have a wide variety of audiences, because while beer and pro breweries are primary customers, we do have the brewing companies, so we sell our beer. So we have just consumers. We do wineries, we do kombucha, we do distilling. So it's really having those conversations based on the audience. And I think that that's, again, something that's really important and really critical. There's a big difference with going out and selling, right? Sell my beer, buy my beer. Give them something that they want to talk about. Listen to what they're saying so that you can make your approach kind of like in line. Even on education, as you know, I recently moved to Salt Lake. And it's been fun. It has been fun going around to meet different brewers that I didn't see because I've been in Colorado for so long, and just having those informal conversations. And then we start talking beer styles, right? Then we start talking, well, what about this malt? What about, and that, like, again, that's education. I'm not selling you anything at that point. We're just having a conversation. And I think that that's really important to remember, for all of us in this industry. Talk from your heart, and listen to what the person that you're discussing with is telling you, because you don't want to fall into the what I call a you salesman trap, right?
And we're absolutely in the relationships business. And this has been a conversation I've had with a few people recently. How would you describe the current state of collaboration versus competition in the craft beer industry now? Do you feel there's more competition between brewers, or are we still having that level of collaboration we saw maybe a decade ago when brewers in a community all knew one another and shared willingly?
Again, this is where the history is going to come back, and I don't want to say anything to upset anybody. My biggest concern is that we've lost the history of the industry, like where we've come from. And a lot of that is collaboration, right? And a lot of breweries now, they're in crowded marketplaces. There's 20, 30 small tap rooms in a city. And there needs to be collaboration, because obviously you want people to come in and drink, but there also, by the sheer nature of the volume, has to be more competition. And the competition, you have to, again, like I was saying before, you have to be a little careful about just selling your beer, right? Our beer is the best. Our beer is the best. Why are people coming into your facility, right? That's like you're talking about the relationship, the experience. So I would personally say, I feel there's probably more competition just because there's more breweries. The nature and the industry in general is always going to be collaborative, because that's just who we are. We're all excited about it, no matter where you sit or what, whether it's an association or a supplier or a brewery or a distributor, we're all in this because we love the product. But, we definitely have lost some of that, I'll just call personal connection, in that, even before COVID. And I think it's just because we don't really look back very often at the history of this industry and how we got to where we got, right? You have those icons, people will remember those icons, but have we really tried to make sure that there's been a continuum of, here's the timeline of what we, who the movers and shakers were in the 80s, and their influence on the 90s, and then the influence on the early 2000s and the 210s and the 220, right? I think that part of it, to me, is why we've lost some of the collaboration, because really haven't put together the history in a way that's relatable to what's happening right now.
That's such an interesting thought because craft beer is so much about storytelling. Breweries want to share their story, the stories behind the beers. Yet you're saying the story's almost gotten lost over the years from how we got to from point A to point B.
Yeah.
How do you think we can do better about that?
Well, I mean, we've talked about it. I'll just say the mature and wise ones. Like I said, Julia Hers always tells me I'm not allowed to say I'm old.
One of my favorite people as well.
Yeah, exactly. But she always says you can't say you're old, JoAnne. I'm like, okay. I can say dinosaur. I can say I can just say I've been around for a long time. But I think it's getting back to looking at where the industry was. How to. I don't know if there's a magic button as you say it, but I personally can tell you all these amazing stories about these brewers, and these breweries are still around. Some are still around, some aren't still around, right? And when we go out and we talk about our brewery, and we talk about, again, every brewery has a story. Are we talking about what led us down this path? Are we talking about that beer that we had as a home brewer? Or we like? I don't hear a lot of this is why I started my brewery as much, and maybe that's part of it. And maybe it's just we just haven't done a good job as an industry in general of laying that groundwork and telling the story. Where's the historical timeline of we had 100 breweries, blah blah blah. Like, it's out there, but it's just not in a cohesive manner. I 24 GABFs I think I've been to. And I remember when there were 100 breweries or 50 breweries, and now there's thousands of them. And I don't know where the platform is to tell it, but I think it would be really important. And I think what we would find is that a lot of the breweries would realize they're relatable to a wider demographic because you're crossing an age gap. I really don't like when someone's like, it's not your father's beer. I'm like, actually, it'd be cool if it was your father's beer, right? Because your father's enjoying it and I'm enjoying it. That's kind of cool.
No, that's amazing. That's what beer is about, shared experiences.
Yep.
So looking at, what you've done in your life, you've worked in so many different industries. And I learned from looking at your LinkedIn that you also taught high school math at one point in time.
I did.
So looking at all your unique careers, whether, in beer, whether teaching, whether you founded the Colorado Distillers Guild, correct?
I did.
So you've done a lot of really neat things. What's one thing, or maybe a few things you want to throw out there that you've learned from other industries outside of beer that you think we should be bringing in the craft beer industry?
First thing I will say is arrogance. Arrogance has no place in any industry. You can be proud of your product, but if you're boastful and rude and again, kind of downtrodden to the others, it doesn't work and it doesn't help the industry. Whether it was prep schools or whether it was distillers or, I do some organizational design work with different associations. It's, you always have to be able to be self-reflecting. You always have to sit down and say, this isn't going well. This isn't, whatever the industry is, right? And I think that that's a lesson that crosses everything. I think the other thing is really, no matter who you are, making sure you understand the audience you're talking to. Again, and this kind of ties into arrogance, there is no place for me, right? It's not about you. When you walk into a meeting or you walk in to have a discussion, there's a bigger picture that's going on, and you have to be able to pick up on the subtle cues and what's happening. And you can't just walk in and talk about me, because then you lose people. You lose that ability to connect. So I think, again, I think that's just general organizational design. And I think too, it's that self-reflecting part. I will tell you, as we're just talking, in general, when a brewer tells me that I have never dumped out a batch of beer. I've never had a bad beer. I look at them and I'm like, I don't want to try your beer. And I know that's a pretty strong statement, But it just says to me that you're not, again, are you willing to be honest with yourself? Because stuff doesn't go right all the time. It doesn't, I mean, we we had a meeting last week at White Labs, and I always encourage my staff to, let's have an honest discussion. What are we not doing well? It's okay. It's not, don't take it personally. And I think that's the other thing too, is that we have to really teach people to not get too personal. This is business. This is beer. This is passion. I understand that. But sometimes, again, don't make it just about you, because then you might make a decision that you otherwise wouldn't. But yeah, I mean, yeah, and maybe that's too why I don't like to talk. Because I'm just kind of like, I'm always kind of like, well, I don't really have much to say. I don't really, like, I don't know what I'm bringing to the table. I really want to hear what people want me, again, what people want to discuss.
I respect that. I like to listen. I like to learn. And you mentioned a minute ago that, everyone's going to make a bad batch of beer sometimes. And I think that's truly how we become better people and better organizations, because we learn from our mistakes. If we're not making mistakes, then we're not going in a forward direction. And my wife hates it when I say I like to be wrong, because she thinks I'm not telling the truth, but I do like to be wrong sometimes,
It's so funny because the people think it, they're like, oh, yeah, you just think. I'm like, no, I have no problem with someone telling me that didn't work. I didn't like your approach. It didn't, because again, I always tell people, there's value in the journey, not just the outcome. There is, and again, that's maybe why I think we should tie in like the history of beer, right? The value's in the journey. The industry is where it is because of what's been happening over the past 30 years and all of the participants, right? Look at look at where this industry is. If you had asked somebody 30 years ago, and I'm sure you can ask Charlie Papazian or, at Pete Schlossberg, or any of them, right? Larry Bell, would you have ever imagined this is where the industry would be? A lot of people would have different insights, right? And so I just think it's important to always just kind of take that step back and reflect and really understand, again, what's going well, what's not going well, and say I can always be a little bit better.
No, I love it. And looking at the craft beer industry right now, what's something that makes you optimistic about the future?
Well, to that last statement, I think a lot of it is what's been happening in the industry is the honesty about what's transpired over the years, whether it be in the nature of sexual harassment, whether it be in diversity. And we're working hard as an industry to try and address these things that we know were probably not where they should have been. I am so hopeful, when I see, I'm actually on the NBA DEI task force, but seeing all the industry, all the industry associations come together to address it, looking at the mentorship program, and already, seeing stories about these brewers who are coming out of these mentor programs. So again, it's just going to make our industry more collaborative and more cohesive. So I think to me, that's just a huge step that the industry in general is doing a little bit of self-reflecting on where we were and where we want to be.
I think it's very important, and positive steps in the right direction are great to see. One other thing besides your insight that I really enjoy about you is the pictures you post on Facebook of your son and rock climbing and all the travels, you do in your personal life. How do you, because you are so busy, JoAnne, you are tuned in at nearly 24/7, but how do you find time to spend it with your family and do the things you enjoy?
Well, again, to me, everything is a balance, right? And you and I were just talking about this, about, for a lot of people that transition to working remote, and like, how do you walk away? You have to make that decision, right? I just kind of said it's the value of the journey. We also have my son, since he's been little, has a saying. I'm like, experience is not stuff. Like, we've never had a lot of stuff in our houses, but we're always out doing something. And I think it's just making it a priority, because that's who we are as a family. My son, myself, and the dog that rolls her eyes at me every so often. That's who we are, and we follow our passion and we follow our excitement, and we make sure that it's part of what we do on a regular basis. It's actually kind of cool because he's in college now, and today was the first official day of school.
Congratulations.
Yeah. Oh no, I'm really excited. People are like, "Are you gonna miss him?" I'm like, "No." And again, I do miss him, But at the same time, I'm kind of like, now he's doing his own thing. Like, what do I get to do now? So I'm already kind of thinking of some new projects for 2022. Do I want to start? Recently, I broke my wrist. As some people know. So I haven't been climbing as much. So I've been running a lot. So now I'm like, ooh, do I want to do another 100K? Do I want to? So, again, maybe this is kind of what I was saying before and what we were kind of talking about being self-reflective. Who I am as a person, whether you encounter me in the beer world, whether you encounter me in the climbing world, or the consulting world or mentorship or, a number of the different things I do, you always get me as the totality, the good and the bad, right? You get all the pieces. And I'm honest about, what's working and what's not working.
I think it all comes together back to your education focus, because you have to understand someone from all angles to truly understand them, whether it's you, whether it's beer, whatever we're talking about. That is, understanding all aspects is so vital.
It is, it's just, I just think about all, all the breweries out there, all the climbing gyms out there, everything has been happening to COVID, right? And you have to always look at it from the 1,000-foot viewpoint. If you just constantly get in your, like I said, your own headspace, and that's all you're concerned about, you'll miss opportunities. You'll just miss opportunities to not just improve yourself or your business, but like you got to always have that 1,000-foot viewpoint. And I think that's something that's really hard for a lot of people, because especially when you're like, if you're owning your own business, because that is your focus, right? But I think it's really important to take that step back and look at it from the bigger picture.
I agree. So big picture, JoAnne, what's next for you? You've worked in so many different industries. You have so many passions in your life. Is there anything on that list that you still want to do, that experience you and your son have to have? Like, if you could be anywhere right now, where would it be? Obviously, without a broken wrist.
Yeah. Well, what he and I we had talked about, and obviously this got derailed, is I would like to do a big mountain climb. Now, obviously, Everest is not, I don't think, on my radar, because that would mean literally taking a year off of work and training. But we've talked about wanting to, at some point, maybe something like Denali, and doing some more true mountaineering, the two, just he and I, for fun. But he has his own goals. And like I said, he's in school right now. So we really have to plan. So next on the agenda, yeah, I have something that I'm working on that is combining my two passions for climbing and craft beer for 2022. That's been in a business plan on the back burner for a while. I moved to Midvale, Utah, so that was like a big deal, right? And I picked up and moved out of Colorado, so I look forward to making lots of connections with the craft beer here, because the craft beer scene in Salt Lake is phenomenal. A lot of really interesting breweries, also a lot of great craft distilleries out here as well. Good restaurant scene too. Yeah, probably a few more. Like I said, probably get back into doing ultra marathons and things, because, like I said, with my son at school, I have more time. Yeah, I mean, I don't really have like definitive, but I am excited for 2022 really try and get this passion project of climbing and craft beer off the ground. So
Are you able to give us a little teaser at all on that one?
No, not yet, just because not yet. It's about kind of like the same thing that you do, about passionate conversations about the things that you love. And what a lot of people don't realize, and I should say that the brewers who actually are into climbing know this, is that craft beer has a lot of climbers, like brewery owners and brewers that are climbers. And so it's a really cool little undercurrent scene, which is fun. So I had originally started the Colorado Climbers League, and it would be kind of fun to do that nationwide. So maybe that in the future too. But yeah, like I said, I don't have anything right now.
I love how you say you don't have anything. Then you list like 10 different things and ideas and other aspects of your life you're passionate about. And I think that's great. You give everyone else inspiration just to do more. I mean, I stay busy all the time, but you make me want to rock climb. You make me want to travel more. You make me just want to further my business the best I can. I think that's really inspiring, JoAnne.
Well, I appreciate that, but you should always want to do some rock climb more. That's just, support your local climbing gyms, just like craft beer and legislation. There's laws out there that are trying to support these climbing gyms were decimated during COVID. Um, yeah, I mean, I guess, well, I take it back. So there is one thing that I will just say to this audience, because it is, again, not specifically craft beer related, but climbing related, is that, USA climbing, we won a medal in the Olympics. First year it was in the Olympics. Yay. Exactly. Phenomenal. Nobody ever thought we would. But one of the things that we're working on right now is getting a foundation off the ground. And so my work with USA Climbing is, to your point, is just really exciting because I have to get more committee members. I'm the chair of the nomination and governance, but we have to get more committee members. But we're working on a foundation so we can actually start to really introduce more kids to climbing, be able to support programs out there to further that Olympic movement beyond, if you want to say, just the privileged class. So that part is pretty exciting.
That's amazing. I'm excited to follow your progress making that happen, because I'm sure you will. And every other thing you've got your fingers in. And JoAnne, I do want to thank you for coming to hang out with me again today. I know you're going to go help at the rock climbing gym moving out.
Yeah, I'm going to shoot over to USA Climbing. It was disappointing, but we had an amazing training center, which I really believe helped us get to a medal at the Olympics, which was, again, it's still, every time you think about it, it's just so phenomenal. But yeah, our training center, we have to move. So USA Climbing staff, within a matter of 2 weeks, has literally taken down our entire training center. And it has to be done and out the door by Friday.
Well, at least you won't have to do much of the heavy lifting.
No, I'm getting out of it. But but again, I did get clearance last week. My bone is actually healed, so I will be back climbing starting next week. I was given permission, not full weight bearing, so I can't do actual like a lot of the trainings and pull ups and that type of thing. But I do get to be back in the climbing gym next week.
That's amazing, and I know you'll love it. I have one final question for you. That'll be one final word. If you could take one word that represents your life, or your just energy, or your ethos, what would that word be?
Intentional.
I love it. I love it. I love what you do. I love how inspiring you are. And I look forward to seeing you again, hopefully before too long.
Yeah. Well, the next time, hope maybe in the interim, but the next time I know I'll see you is, we look forward to, and I'm really happy that White Labs has been able to support CBC Connects. And yeah, so we'll see. The next time we'll see you is Norfolk for sure.
Well, I appreciate all your support and everything. For everyone listening, hope to see you in Norfolk, Virginia as well, February 7th, 8th, and 9th for an in-person workshop. Appreciate White Labs, JoAnne, and everything they do. And good luck helping them clean up the climbing gym.
Yep, Talk to you soon. Thanks, guys. Bye.